Saturday?
Progress to be made. Certainly the number one thing is, as you guys know, anytime you're in a practice setting, a lot of times we're scripting plays. The two things that stand out are, number one, the first time from just an operation standpoint, we had the 40-second clock out there. The coach comm is shutting off at 15. All those different things of getting lined up, dealing with penalties. And then certainly from a conditioning standpoint, we're in a control environment at practice there, 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 play drives. So those two things were certainly good things for our players to feel.
Mark mentioned just the execution in certain difficult situations. What's the kind of key to getting through on those third and shorts that maybe wasn't there a year ago?
Well, we certainly addressed some things. A lot for us was just beating ourselves. Things of whether it was cadence related, obviously schematically. I think the biggest thing is just right now is how we can have less concepts and do them more over and over again so guys feel extremely comfortable. Because as you guys know, you take one run play, you take 3 or 4 different fronts, and that one run play can feel a lot. It can feel like a lot of adjustments. And so for us, really honing into that scheme in year 2, trying to simplify it, and again, making it about the fundamentals and execution.
You said on media day you thought you ran Brock too much early in the season last year. They went through that same conversation Will Levis's second year here. How do you balance that, protecting a guy but not taking away something that's so important to your offense? It's something that presumably Zach is part of the skill set up there.
Yeah, I think it's not getting greedy. I think, as a coordinator, maybe when it was a situation where you're running him on a 2nd and 10 in the open field versus a gotta-have-it situation on the 8-yard line going in to score. And I think we're seeing it across the league. You're seeing it in the NFL where quarterbacks are asked to run it more and protect themselves. But I think it's just something, again, for us, from a self-scout standpoint, got to keep that guy healthy for as long a stretch as we have, and that's certainly on our minds.
It sounds like the offensive line was tested quite a bit on Saturday. Just how did you see them respond?
They did a nice job. They've done a good job all camp. Again, I just think it's a very professional outfit. There's guys that have played, whether at Kentucky or other places, but have started games. Again, I think the conditioning piece would probably be the biggest thing, is just really feeling what it feels like to go 8, 9, 10, 11 play drives with the mixture of tempos and always straining when you're tired. But overall, I think they're in a good spot to make a big jump here in this second week.
It seemed like Patterson had a pretty good day on Saturday. What did you see from him?
He's benefited. He really has. I think in this day and age of college football, when you take a kid like him and you bring in 2 transfers, they got 2 ways to react to it. And he's been a guy that's just put his head down, gone to work. I think in a lot of ways, again, with those 2 other backs, we've seen him play a lot of football, and so he's getting a ton of opportunities. And he is one of those guys that has really stood out, who's just been about his business, goes to work every single day, isn't worried about anything other than just improving his craft. And I think he'll be rewarded.
You're at near the midway point of fall camp, and it can be a grind. So what's the key to making sure there's not a stalemate, and kind of what do you want to see over this back half?
I think competition, it always starts there, and I think we're certainly trying to create it at a ton of different positions. I think obviously we know the quarterback piece, and that's always going to be discussed. But again, the 2-3 backs we have are competing, and some guys are competing. They're going to be playing, but how many targets are they going to get? I think the receiver room is probably the most competitive room right now. We're really not sure where those guys are at. There's probably 7 or 8 guys, as you see from watching practice. The consistency's up and down. Some of the better players are less consistent, and so on and so forth. So for us, these guys know what it's on the line. We've really tried to evaluate and address where they're at on August 11th so they can respond to that and be ready to go early in the year.
Okay, folks, thank you very much. You've got players waiting over
Right.
here. If I cut it off a little early, don't be mad at Coach, be mad at me. So, everybody good? Everybody got their balance?
You let him over this week. That's nice of you.
Well, I got myself. We was talking about assignment and alignment when I came over here. I totally missed. I was on the assignment, but I missed my alignment. So anyway, cool question for Coach.
Coach, what did you learn on Saturday?
We learned that we need to tackle better. So as much as we can get that, you always know after a long layoff, tackling's going to be a little bit rough on that first one, and it was, especially in the first drive. So, it was good. There were some good humbling experiences there. We need that. You need to get humbled, and so hopefully they can respond.
You mentioned on media day about how it had to be a collective defense where there was going to be a lot of rotating. How do you come to find out the right kind of who fits well together and how you roll in those substitution patterns?
Yeah, we're still in the process of that. Like it's still trying to find the right mix right now. And as you're mixing groups, you find out who communicates well together. Which guys maybe vibe together better. If within a practice, if a guy gets a little boo-boo and he has to come out for a series or something, now another guy has to go in, and so that's sometimes it's organic, sometimes it's forced. Like we'll script different groups intentionally just to see how they react. You put a two in the ones group to see, hey, listen, you may be dominating, against, the two groups. Let's see how you step up, when you go against the ones, and you find out what you really have. So, again, a lot of humbling moments happen in camp, especially for younger players who think, okay, I'm starting to arrive, and then they go against, fourth and fifth year college football players, and they find out that this is way bigger than they thought.
There are a lot of humbling moments and in just the grind of camp. So what do y'all try to do to show them a light at the end of the tunnel, to kind of give some almost positive reinforcement to keep them fired up?
Yeah, the one thing about continuity is, especially on defense, we have a lot to draw on. And so when you have a guy like Yusuf Corker in the building, and you can say, listen, here's a guy that redshirted, and then he had a grind, and on that 18 team, was a special teams player and had some, sort of limited snaps, and then became a full-time starter as a sophomore, junior, senior. You talk about Jamin Davis. You talk about a lot of guys that have gone through, and, you think you're going to walk in, and just and be a superstar, because that's what you've always been, and then you find out, wow, everybody in this field was a superstar in their hometown, right? Maybe in their state. And so it takes time, and so you can show them that the process works, in terms of if you can just stay patient, keep getting the coaching, try to get better every day. You're not going to be perfect the next day. Try to just correct the mistakes that the coach, made the day before. You're probably going to make some new ones, take the corrections there, and then just try not to repeat the same ones over and over.
Obviously, when Yusuf and Jamin and those guys were in the portal wasn't a thing. Or do you feel like guys are responding to that message, even though they can just leave and go somewhere else when they're not?
Listen, if at the end of the day, if you try to break away from that model, like I think you're going to be in serious trouble. You can't, just because an external force exists, you can't just all of a sudden say, okay, you're going to change the development process. Like it doesn't exist. Players still have to develop. 18-year-olds still have to become 21 and 22-year-olds. They have to create, they have to grow into their man body. They have to play within a system. They have to learn the checks. There's a lot of moving pieces. To say that just because of that, you're going to skip the process of developing, it's wishful thinking.
How has Davern developed just into that bigger role so far in camp?
I think it's been solid. He's really trying to take to it. And again, it is a much bigger role than he's ever had at anywhere he's been. Not so much from a play time. He played a lot at NIU, and then he's had plenty of full-time snaps here. Started the Missouri game 2 years ago. Started last year against Tennessee there into the boundary lake. So he's got that, but to actually have to be a voice in the locker room, a voice in front of the defense, a guy with a green dot, but he's a guy that I've been really proud of in terms of he's trying. Is it perfect right now? No, and he knows that there's still things that he has to grow through and growing pains. So.
That role you all used him in that Tennessee game outside of it, but do you feel like you can be some versatility in the middle and moving around some, or is he kind of focused mainly on staying?
Yeah, no, he's a guy that gives you that versatility to be able to play in and out, and sort of how, again, you talk about those mixing groups and where guys could could go, and then if injuries happen, who could be guys. You always are trying to have some plan B's and plan C's. Hey, if this happened or if that happened, hey, what is the contingency plan? And so you always have those in the back of your mind, and he's a guy that gives you some of that flexibility.
Brad, in your back seven, how pleased are you, or what's it look like with your backups, your 2s and 3s, your depth back there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of day by day, play by play. Sometimes it looks good and you feel good, and then there's some other plays you're like, wow, there's some younger guys back there, and they're going to have to learn through that mistake. And so you never know exactly what you have, until game day hits. Again, I'll go back to 22 down there in the swamp, and Jordan Lovett gets thrown into the fire as a redshirt freshman, and he was a guy that had really sort of struggled through camp that year, and you're like, man, hopefully he doesn't have to go until next year, and then the Geiger injury happens, and the next thing you look up, you're like, okay, and he responded in the moment. Some guys respond in the moment. Ty Bryant did a great job his true freshman year responding in the moment, going in the Tennessee game as first time starting a game. But some guys don't. Some guys, it's too big for them at the time. And so, practice is one thing. We try to put them in as many adverse situations to really sort of create that humility, and then to see how they respond to it. Because the bottom line is, if you're going to be a young guy and you play, you're going to make mistakes in a game. And if you can't respond on the practice field, you sure as heck aren't going to respond.
Okay, folks, I need to get